All right, so welcome everyone. This evening we are going to have another one of our panels. And so I'll invite them to come up here and get settled into their seats. So you guys can all come on up to the table. And the kind of the title of this evening's panel is Part of the Body. We got a little bit out of order here this fall, just with the way the talks fell with trying to find speakers and all of that. And so originally, this was going to be right after Jeff Wiegand's talk on church membership. And so tonight we're just going to hear a little bit from individuals who have been church members for a while, I'll say it that way, and we're going to hear a little bit about their experiences. And one of the reasons that we wanted to cover this topic and just hear a little bit from them is because the reality is that church attendance has been on the decline in the U.S. for quite a while, and that really only grew over COVID. And so sometimes we do hear individuals that ask the question, well, why do I need to go to a church? Why can't I just listen online all the time? What's the point of being a part of a body? So tonight we're going to learn a little bit about individuals' experiences and what they would maybe say to that. So with that, we're going to have two microphones here. And I know you all know who these individuals are up here, but you might not know a little bit about where they came from originally when they were converted and what that looked like. So, Jeannie, you can either start or you can pass it down and go that way. I'll let you decide. And we're just going to have a little bit of a conversation here this evening around some of these different topics. So, yeah, John and Cheryl, if you wouldn't mind just starting with this first question, giving us a little bit of background of how long you've been a member and what that looked like and how long you've been in Champaign too.
Well, we've keep talking.
Yep,
We've
hold it
been
up real close to your mouth too
okay.
for all of you.
We've been members of the Apostolic Christian Church for 50 years. We repented in 1975, and it's when our daughter Charisse was 9 months old. And we mostly became members because we knew we were sinners and we needed to be saved by grace, and it was a choice just to become members of the church. We repented in Remington, and we lived there for 10 years. And all of our kids were born in Lafayette Home Hospital. And we were part of the Remington Church because that's where John went to a wedding once. So we were very thankful that the Lord had us in Remington.
I thought it was a little more oriented to where we were before we repented, but Cheryl grew up in Elgin, and I grew up in Princeville. So if you ever wonder how we met, uh, my brother married her aunt, so she set us up on a blind date. So it worked out. Anyway, very good. But anyway, I went to church here in Champaign when I went to school here many years ago, but there was no church in Champaign at that time. Can you hear? Okay, very good. And we were meeting at the Union over U of I campus and a singing and a message about, I think once a month, and then they maybe changed it. I was not converted at the time. In fact, we were not converted when we got married in 1974. And then I went to work in LaSalle, Peru for a few years and drove to Bradford Church. That's where my folks were attended church, and so I was there for a couple of years in Fort Wayne. Uh, was there when Fort Wayne was in the middle of splitting off from the AC Church back in 1970, I believe it was. So I didn't feel a lot of that, but maybe a little bit of it. And then moved to Lafayette and was there for a number of years, and that's where we lived when we got married, and we attended Remington Church. And just a little bit about Remington. Edwin Baylor was our mentor there. He was the deacon, and we just felt like he got us off to a very, very good start. And remember, uh, he and Lois would drive down, and we'd have a Bible study. We went clear through Proverbs, probably the first 6 months we were married, and so forth. After we were converted, yeah. So, any other?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, well,
Hold it up.
okay. Eat it, right? Okay. Um, I was born and raised in Rockville, Connecticut, and that was where I repented. And in 1962, just after high school graduation and prior to going to the University of Connecticut, I was baptized then. And then, yeah, that was lots of things happening then. But anyway, in 1979, I came to Champaign to take a 1 year's master's program to work with children with special needs, and I ended up staying, and so here I am still, and it was wonderful. And then actually, after a few years, I went to Japan. I went to Japan for 2 years, and then came back, and then made my permanent residence here in Champaign, for which I'm very thankful.
I grew up in Chatsworth, Illinois, attended Forest Church till I left home at 18 and actually came down here to school for 4 years. And for those who have been here know that Cheryl and Denny were here in 75, and once they moved here, I started attending church. I left Champaign-Urbana in the mid-70s and moved to Phoenix, Arizona, where I lived for 25 years. And it was there that my past life caught up with me, I guess, that I started thinking about where I was and the sin in my life, and started attending Phoenix Church and was baptized there in 1998 and moved here to Champaign later in 98. So I've been here for about 25 years.
Yeah, so everybody's kind of entering in and over different decades kind of joined. John and Cheryl, I forgot to ask you this. Remind me what year it was that you ended up down in Champaign. Was that 21, 2020? Okay, 2019. Okay. So, okay, right before COVID, you guys came in. Okay. Very good. And so one of the points that I'd like to just talk about for a few minutes is that in our society today, I think there can be a mindset of consumerism when you're looking for a church, and it can be this expectation of what can the church do for me versus how can I serve, how can I give back to the church. And so I would be curious just to hear a little bit of your thoughts, what that's looked like for you. How have you found a place to serve in the body? How have you been able to use some of your gifting with that over the years? And how has that maybe changed from when you were younger to current day?
I guess if we're going to look at how it changed, I need to start where I was before and now where I am today, or where we are. I think when we joined the church and looked at it, it was more putting it in and doing things. Do. And I served on a number of boards and Sunday school teacher and so forth. And I think and that's okay. But that isn't what we ended up looking at, what was in church. I think the main reason that we stayed, I don't know about stayed in church, but it was because of who was here and who we wanted to associate with, and we wanted our children to be with children of similar minds and who had parents that had same attitudes as we did. It was much easier when you have outside support rather than always trying to pull back your children. Oh, I don't want you to do that. I want you to do where you're comfortable and saying. So I would say in those days it was more who we were friends with or family. Today, how has that changed? I think my role in church has definitely changed, and I look at my role in church today to be an encourager. That's I'd say, and it's not to be an encourager necessarily in what you're doing, but an encourager in our worship of the Lord, and to give all praise to Him and just be thankful for where we've been.
Yeah, I agree with John that it's more, we're here to serve the Lord, and we enjoy hearing the sermons and feeling the love from everybody instead of what we can do for the church. So it's a good thing to get old.
Yeah, well, I I feel basically that I've always been a supporter of wherever I in Connecticut or here, but I also was always a Sunday school teacher, so that was something that my role was, and I always felt like I was active in the church, and I regularly attended all the time in Connecticut and here in Champaign. Serving lunch too was something I did, yeah. But just kind of being a supporter and showing up all the time and with a smile, and so that's what I feel I've done.
It's interesting to look at your life when you look back at where you were. As I said, I grew up in Forest, probably attended Sunday school from the age of 3 till I graduated from high school. And it was pretty much a clean slate. I don't remember even knowing what a Christian was. To my mind, you were members of the AC Church. And it took me a long time to realize that your commitment first is to God, not until a church. And maybe because I didn't feel any connection, I was able to leave that lifestyle and not look back. And until in my 40s, I was 43 when I made the decision that I needed to be baptized. So it's been curious now as a 70-year-old to look back and see, how did I come through that? You know, what enabled me to go to church all my life and yet be completely shut off from the Lord? So it's such an encouragement for me to, as I look at the church now, to see what our young people get in Sunday school. You know, there's a connection from early on that, to be honest, I never felt. You know, it was kind of like something I did every Sunday. You went to church. And it was like that was the midst of it. So when I felt convicted of needing to go back to church in my early 40s, I did turn to the only thing I knew, which I knew there was an AC church in Phoenix. So, you know, God was good in bringing me back and to be able to find my salvation there. And because of that, I think when I became part of the church, you know, my kids were teenagers. I never was in that early groundwork, so I've seen my role more as just supporting. And I don't lead much, but I want to help and support those who are here in the Champaign Church. You know, it's just been a godsend. I've seen in my years people that have no support system, you know, not only from family, but to a church. And I think that's what drew me back to our church is the church family that we have, and we need to not take it for granted.
Yeah, I really appreciate those thoughts from each of you, and even it sounds like there's been a progression for a number of you from going to a place of doing, whether that's serving in different roles and capacities like that, to being and to being present and to recognize just that level of support that you can offer. And I know that I've felt, I would say a lot of us have felt from each of you at different times. It's invaluable to have those individuals in our church. Kind of dovetailing with this, another question that I would have is just, how do you think being part of a church has really helped your spiritual walk over time? Yeah, what would you say to that? How have you grown spiritually by being part of a local body?
Okay. Excuse me. I'm going to go back a little bit to that one as they were talking. But how have I changed a little bit, and then we'll go on. You may have to remind me of the next question anyway. So, but I was listening to the radio. I don't know. Joe Stoll was on one time, and he's a pastor at the Moody Bible Institute. And some lady took him or had him aside and just was complaining how bad it was. She was not getting anything out of church and just going on and on about it. And he said, ma'am, you don't come to church to get anything out of, you come to church to put in. And I think that particular statement changed my heart. Before that, I was a little, I think it was, Jeannie was talking about duty or going to church or not having a big desire. When we repented, we went to church and so forth, but now it's more, what can I put into church? And in my heart in the last couple of years has been worship. I'm going to church to worship, and that from that standpoint. So now let's go back to, did I answer that question?
Yeah, no, that's great. And any other thoughts about just how being part of this local body has helped you spiritually?
Oh, the local body here in, I think, well, in Remington and Morton both, and here I am in a Bible. We're in Bible studies, but we have the number of Bible studies that we've been in has been a real encouragement to learn about the Lord. In Jeremiah 9:23, it talks about the Lord said, "You can boast in me, and to know and understand me in my loving kindness, righteousness, and judgment, and that is my delight." And so I think that if we can tie worship and delight together, it's to get in there and see those books, take a book or the Bible. I read books. I read a number of books, but the book we have to take. It isn't the Bible, but we can take stuff out of a book and go into the Bible and pull things out of it and learn it. But we have to wash it through and make sure it's of the Lord. But Bible studies, being in the Word, singing is. I don't sing, but I love to listen to music. It's just a big. In fact, I treadmill now, and I'm thankful I have hearing aids or earbuds because I can listen to music all the while.
Yeah, I think the first thing I thought of was the same thing, Bible studies and music. I don't think we even and I don't either probably, appreciate how much the singing, the a cappella singing, means to us and to people that come in the church. They love hearing the a cappella singing, and that's been really good to hear from people that don't go to our church. So that's a big thing too.
Well, how has the church been helpful to me? Um, it's been, tremendously, wonderfully impactful. I feel that, what did I write here? I've seen role models. That's the thing. One of the things, role models here in the church, and in fellow believers, and just hearing the word on a regular basis, and being taught the truth. And in being a Sunday school teacher, I learned more than what I had ever taught anybody. So I just feel that the church has been very helpful to my spiritual growth.
I think it's the accountability that we want and need out of our church family. I've tended to be kind of a lone wolf most of my life, and it's hard to accept that you need accountability. And that was kind of brought to light during the pandemic where, we didn't come to church, and after we started coming again, it was hard to get back into the routine, and it probably would have been very easy just to continue listening online, but it's being part of a church family and just the accountability of going. And I think of a statement that was said, it may have been of the Jeff Wiegand when he was here, that you are the church. If I think I don't need to come, well, what's to stop you from thinking you don't need to come? And if there's enough of that, then we don't have a church family.
Yeah, just as you were talking there, Jeannie, it made me think too of sometimes we only think of church as Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights like this, and church is 24/7. And some of the examples that you all mentioned of Bible study and gathering and role models and all of that, these are all parts of being in a local body that you get to experience throughout your daily life. And through that, the Lord can really use that to sanctify us in a different way than when we are those lone wolves out there. Now, we just talked about how the benefits that we get spiritually. And I want to talk just a minute about maybe a little bit of a harder topic where sometimes church can be a little tricky to come to, and there can be hurt that has been caused. I'm guessing at different points in people's lives here tonight, they maybe felt offended by someone or hurt, maybe even unintentionally by another brother or sister. And I'm curious if any of you have experienced that. Like what helped you work through that? And what advice would you give to someone who's maybe harboring some hurt and has had some of that happen in their lives? We're going to change directions this time, right?
Well, I think with that, it's something we discussed when we got together earlier today, is that a church does not hurt you. People hurt you. And you can't blame the church for actions of people in it and hold that against the church. And I probably would have been guilty of that, and it took a long time for me to realize, it's people. It wasn't the Apostolic Christian Church that hurt me.
Yeah, that is very true. But I did experience from observation a very, very hurtful long-term situation with one of my family members, very close family member, not here in this church, but in another, yeah. And it was extremely painful because it was very long term, and it was more an individual and another individual, and it was, I listened, I prayed, and I cried and cried and cried out to God many, many times. It's a very hard thing to go through, and yeah, from other experiences in my life, I knew God was there, and so that was what really got me through.
I can't say that was from church, but I think I learned personally about forgiveness when our kids went to school and our son, somebody stole his language book in first grade. And it was at a Christian school. And it was really, really hard because they didn't have another one. So we kind of had to. Anyway, it was probably really good for me to learn forgiveness in a big way. And even though it wasn't like at church, it was still a Christian person. And clear at the end of the year, the boy confessed and said, I stole Jay's book. But it taught me a lot. I think God uses things from anywhere to teach us lessons, and that really taught me a huge lesson in forgiveness along the way and looking at ourselves instead of somebody else.
And I agree with that. Hard times, I just wrote down best if you can work it out, but time is a great healer. And I think addressing something, but a lot of times the addressing has to be inward because it doesn't change the other person. So if you can give that other person or whatever it is up and look at yourself and how you can draw closer to the Lord through that whole healing process is helpful.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that the Lord can redeem some really ugly and hard situations in our lives, and I appreciate each of you just touching on that. And I feel like that's one of the things tonight. We're not going to be able to go into all the details. I feel like I could follow up a little bit more on all of these, but hopefully tonight you can each of you listening can consider, hey, maybe I want to follow up a little bit more and ask a few more questions about what that looked like personally for that person. I think this is it's a very real topic in our society, and you hear terms like church hurt or church trauma thrown around a lot in our society. And I appreciate just the different points that you bring out too about forgiveness. And honestly, in order to work through forgiveness, you do have to name people. Like Jeannie said, we talked about that a little bit earlier today when we were together. It can be really easy just to make a generalization. And honestly, I've heard that sometimes for people. They'll say, oh, I'm mad at Harvest Call, or I'm mad at the church. But what does that really mean? And until you actually boil that down a little bit more and you identify who is maybe the target of that hurt from your past, then that's where you can actually start to heal and start to work through some things. Next question we'll move to here. Just think about different times when you've seen the church family come together. What was special to you about that? Are there any particular situations or events where you've seen that happen and that were unique or special to you, looking back over the years?
I'm always quick to answer, so I shouldn't. I should think deeper. But anyway, the first thing that came to my mind was our grandson was born at 1 pound 10 ounces. And there were days where he was in the NICU for 3 months. And there were days that we didn't think he was going to make it. And so we were in Morton Church, and Joe Breaker had been up to the hospital that morning. It was a Sunday morning. And it was really touching because he went back to church and he said, we're not going to start off the way we normally do. It gives me the chills thinking about it. So this was the first thing I thought of. He said, we're going to have a prayer right now for BJ. And that was just something that I'll never forget. And to see the whole big Morton church come together in prayer for him. And by the time the service was over, his heart was going again. So it was very touching.
The times I seen, I think it's more gathering together, and we started what we called a Sunday school benefit dinner in Morton, and it was to raise funds for the Jamaica trip way back in the years. And the first thing they did is they had a garage sale, and you think, oh, these are just, but seeing people work together, and it wasn't old people, it wasn't middle age, and it was everybody was working at this whole project. And then and Caleb, well, you weren't even old enough to remember the first one, so but it was pulling people together and enjoying it, having a great time. And then actually going to the benefit dinner. I didn't sing in it, but I know the choirs that they spent a lot of hours, and it brought people together in the choirs. And then the Sunday school kids would serve the dinner. Somebody else would be making it, and it just was, to me, was seeing the church thrive with relationships, people connecting back and forth. Another time was on senior high boys camp, and seeing that blossom, and being able to see young men come together and sing, pray, and give testimonies, and individuals stand up, and just the togetherness or the connectedness. And I don't want to give the impression that senior high boys camp is just all worship. They had a lot of fun too, playing games and stuff like that. So, but it's just to being able to see community, togetherness, and everybody pulling in one direction.
Yeah, and I would just say, when new people come to our church, everybody comes together and supports them. And just when we have a convert, or when we have something like that, that's a time when I have seen our Champaign church come together. But I'd say, let's do a benefit dinner for somebody. That sounds great.
Yeah, I had the privilege of serving as the church treasurer here for a short time years ago. And the best advice I ever heard came from our dearly beloved Keith Hansen, who said, a church bank account should not have a lot of money in it, because it does not do any good there. We need to give out everything we take in. And it really made my heart happy to see in these last couple of years how we helped out the Melma family. That really, and as discussion was held, you can't plan for everything. And that opportunity just, to me, kind of fell into our lap here in Champaign. And it was just so great to see people step up and help out somebody really in need.
It's a lot we can do together. And each of you brought that out in different ways, whether that's through camps and through prayer and all these different settings. When you work together, man, just the power that can come from that is pretty incredible, that you can't ever accomplish on your own. So what advice, we talked a few different angles here tonight, but what advice would you give to the rest of us sitting out here in the congregation? Any other lessons that you want to pass along or encouragements that you would have for us, just to keep in mind?
Be present here at church. Attend regularly and become involved. Reach out to others, newcomers, those who seem alone or lonely. Just reach out, yeah.
Well, I think in looking into my own shortcomings as a member of a church is get involved. It's easy to let everyone else do it, but and that's part of my struggle is I would much rather be on the sidelines and let someone else take charge, but without each of us, we don't have a church family. And as you age, a church family will become more and more important to you.
I probably didn't really answer this. Let's see. I said it was nice to have grown up in the church. Our parents both were members of the church. We just grew up just not really thinking about it, just probably not being as thankful as we should have when we were growing up, but we're very thankful, and we mention that to ourselves quite a bit, actually. And so we see the value of a church family. And I just want to say one thing, too. I think others see the value of our church family. We have, or my family, we grew up in Elgin in kind of a not too good of a neighborhood, but 3 of our neighborhood kids within the block are still members of the Elgin AC Church. And that's because we just all hung around together, and I think everybody can make a difference just by being friends with people, and then they see the benefit. I think, singing together, eating together at lunch, and having potlucks and meaningful funerals and growth in the Lord through Bible studies, and those are just things I jotted down, but I don't think I answered the question. Sorry.
No, I think you did great. That's good.
I don't really. I just got a couple quotes that I kind of go back to quotes. And Darren just had one with Tozer on Sunday was when you think of God, what you think is the most important thing you'll think. He didn't quote it quite like that. He took it out of a different book, but that's out of the purpose of God. So just think about that. And so my picture is we would be thinking about God just all the time. And in whatever we're doing, and work or so forth. And then also, he also had a quote in, what is the purpose of man? And if you think about all the things we talked about here, and his comment is to worship God. And I think about that in John 15:8. And I don't remember it. I have to look it up. But it's basically to worship God, to Jesus, that you come and to bear much fruit, it says. And in my heart, in the last few years, much fruit in the Bible has kind of always been nebulous. What does that really mean? And in my heart is to worship God. And then you can take worship and really expand it out. But the thought always is to bring praise to Him through all of that. And I think there was something on there for the younger families, and I think we covered this one time when I gave another one with the men's group. But Larry Crabb, what's the most important thing about raising children? Sydney remembers that. You graded that, right? You graded the test. Is to pursue God. So that we have to keep that in mind. It's awful easy to discipline and do all these things, but we have to pursue God, and through that, we need to be that connection. And the other one that I alluded to before, I think my attitude in life, not only in church, what you put into church, is do I have to do that, or do I get to do that? And my life, I think, has changed. I hear people say, do I have to do that? No, you get to do that. So if we're doing something for the Lord, we get to do it, not have to do it. And it changed my heart a lot.
Well said. Any other thoughts, comments? We have just a few more minutes. Any questions from the audience? Wow, look at that. Yeah, that's great, guys. Okay, I think that's the signal. So again, like I said, we just had just enough time to scratch the surface this evening, but there is a lot of wisdom in this room and up here as well. And so just to continue to lean into conversations like this, to learn from one another, I think that's a huge benefit that we have when I look across this room. We have different experiences, different backgrounds that we're coming from, and that helps us see each other a little bit clearer. It helps us catch blind spots and grow together. So thank you. I just want to say that before I forget. Thank you guys for being willing to share here this evening. Really appreciated the thoughts. So with that, we will close out with a prayer this evening. So can I have a volunteer to do that? Actually, John, you want to just go ahead and do that? I know you. Oh, you did. I missed that. All right, here you go, Trevor.
Let's stand and pray. Dear Lord, I just thank you for this time to come together as a church in the middle of our weeks. Taking the time to hear from the older, more experienced, wise people in our church, Lord. And I just thank you for their presence in our church, their willingness to come and be a part of our body. And they all play such a important role. Their wisdom is beyond my years, all of our years for many of us. And just thank you for the experiences and the teaching moments you've given them, that they can be a light and a path and mentor to many of us. So Lord, as we go throughout our weeks, may we go out living as the church 24/7. And it's in these things, and it's in your name I pray. Amen.